Imagine a princess who was bowed to by empires. In gold. In pearls. In fur-lined dresses that cost more than a small town. In halls where even breathing without permission is a political gesture. Now imagine that same girl a few years later. The ladies-in-waiting do not come closer than a few steps. Ambassadors arrive from other capitals, see her, and then write home not about the alliance, not about the dowry, not about titles. They write about the smell. About the stench. About the fact that it is difficult to tolerate her presence for more than a few minutes. About the fact that the Spanish Infanta, that is, the official daughter of the House of Habsburg, smells, to quote hostile sources, like meat forgotten in the summer sun. People fainted in her presence. Her underwear was changed several times a day, and it darkened from the fluid from open wounds. Courtiers said that the underwear had to be carried away at a distance because, quote, it stank so badly that it made you nauseous, even if you were used to death. And for this, she was called the rotting one. A princess who was still alive, but already seemingly decomposing. This is not just a scary story about a body. It is a story about the collapse of an empire. Because in those days, the body of a monarch was the face of the state. For Henry VIII, his rotten feet were a symbol that his power was also rotten. Here, it's the same thing, only much harsher. This girl's body became proof that Spain was no longer a shining Catholic superpower. It was rotting from the inside. To understand the scale of the tragedy, you first need to see the throne she was being prepared for. Historians still argue about which Spanish infanta the chroniclers had in mind. Some believe that it was Margarita Teresa, the daughter of Philip IV, the same one who became the wife of Emperor Leopold I and died at a very young age. Others believe it was Maria Anna, the sister of Charles II, who never married due to illness. They all belonged to the same branch of the Habsburg family, where poor health and deformities were almost a family trait. So the rotten princess is not a fiction, but a collective image that combines several tragic fates of one family. She was not born as just a child. She was born as an instrument. As a treaty. As a guarantee of peace between dynasties that could declare war on half a continent with a single letter. This is Spain during the Habsburg era. A house sitting on silver from the New World. A house with troops in Italy, control in the Netherlands, and a presence in the Holy Roman Empire. A house so large and so arrogant that other European countries both fear and hate it. She is an infanta. That is, a royal daughter. Translated from the language of diplomats of that time, this means value for exchange. She is still a child, but her body is already considered a future womb for the heirs to someone else's throne. She is a living agreement. A marriage contract with blood. From childhood, she is taught one simple thing: you do not belong to yourself. Your body belongs to Spain. Your maiden purity is a state resource. Your health is national security. Your ability to bear a son is the balance of power in Europe. Her sleep is regulated. Her food is regulated. Her body is examined like cattle before sale. And yes, this is the literalness of the era. Before marriage, the condition of a potential wife was described in letters to foreign courts: her height, delicacy, skin color, signs of health. Beauty can be embellished with words. Infertility cannot. In official portraits, she is perfect. White skin, like marble. Not a single blemish. No hint of rashes or scars. The corset is so tight that she can barely breathe, but the artist paints it as exquisite posture. Her hair is styled by hours of work by maids, heavy jewelry, pearls in her braids, her face calm, almost saintly. In diplomatic correspondence, such girls were described with phrases such as, the delicate rose of the House of Spain, fragile in body, strong in blood. It sounds like poetry. But the translation into modern language is, yes, she looks pale and weak, but don't worry, she can still give birth. And now the truth. Her problems begin very early. Strange skin inflammations. Swellings. Ulcers that do not heal. Doctors write something like, excessive moisture in the body, and, bad juices, because in that era, medicine was a mixture of religion and fantasy. But her loved ones see something else: her tissues are already traumatized and weak in childhood. Wounds do not close. Her skin does not hold. What is sold at court as aristocratic pallor may in fact be exhaustion. What is presented as fragility worthy of reverence is actually a warning. This girl is cracking even before she is married off. Now imagine that the whole country pretends not to see these cracks, because a crack in her means a crack in Spain. Now comes the moment that made this story a legend in popular horror stories about the rotting Spanish princess. Let's start with a scene at court. Imagine Madrid in the summer heat. High ceilings, heavy carpets, stagnant air. The princess is holding an audience. Next to her is the marquise, one of the ladies-in-waiting. She stands too close. And she simply faints. Consciousness, gone. On paper, this will later be recorded as excessive tightening of the corset. That's the official version. Informally, everyone whispers something else: the stench killed her. That is, the smell from the princess's body was so strong that adults, accustomed to everything, blood, torture, plague-ridden streets, could not stand nearby. This is not a cute, "oh, she didn't wash." These are stories of the level of a rotting body while still alive. Her legs, her thighs, her groin, were covered with open sores. Sores that oozed pus and blood. Sores that did not heal. Sores that soaked through layers of clothing. The servants who had to change her clothes dragged their feet and tried to swap tasks, because it was considered almost a punishment. Her underwear had to be changed several times a day because the fabric darkened and stuck to the wounds. Imagine actually tearing a piece of fabric from a living body. Imagine the sound. Imagine the smell. It was said that her shirts had to be taken out immediately, holding outstretched arms in front of them, as if carrying a bucket of filth. The servants allegedly joked, as people who are not funny joke, that the princess is already dead, she just still walks. It's a joke, right? Yes. A joke. And at the same time, a diagnosis. And the court does what courts always do in such cases: it does not treat the cause, but masks the consequences. The protocol of etiquette is quietly changed. Now, when the infanta enters the hall, the court nobility does not come too close, as if out of respect. Officially, they now bow from a greater distance, new etiquette. Sounds nice, doesn't it? Unofficially, it is a sanitary cordon. People literally retreat from her. The scene looks like this: she enters, everyone curtsies, but no one approaches her. She is the center of the world and, at the same time, an outcast in her own hall. And it is important to understand, we know this not because someone stood with a stopwatch and measured the distance. We know this from the words of people who either served her or wrote about her with hatred. In court letters and pamphlets by Spain's enemies, the same picture is repeated: you can't stand close to her because the stench literally knocks you off your feet. Even if there is some exaggeration, the very appearance of such a description is already an indication of the scale of the problem. People don't write about a simply unpleasant smell like that. They write about rot like that. Perfume doesn't help. The court pours musk, rose, and ambergris on her. The smell of bodily decay plus a heavy sweet aroma equals it only gets worse. Witnesses describe it as a sweet stench, a smell so thick that it literally sticks to your throat. It's not just the smell of sweat. It's the smell of fabrics that are no longer alive. Remember, we are talking about the court of the 16th to 17th centuries, where many people stank. This is an era where there is no sewage system, people rarely wash, and medicine consists of leeches and prayers. If someone is considered unbearable in this reality, then it is beyond human limits. And so, this story became a political problem. How could you explain to foreign ambassadors that the girl you were promising as a wife to the king of another country literally smelled like a corpse? Here, everything becomes even darker. You have to understand the context. This is Catholic Spain during the Habsburg era. Hyper-religious, fanatically devout, obsessed with sin, penance, and suffering. Here, pain is not just pain. Here, pain is a signal from God. And when the infanta's body begins to literally fall apart, whispers appear in the palace: this is punishment. Some of the confessors whispered, unofficially, of course, that the princess was living proof of the sins of the house. That she carries the decay of the empire in her own flesh. That her decay is not medicine, it is theology. Punishment for the pride of Spain. Punishment for fanaticism. Punishment for the incest of the Habsburgs. Yes, let's say it out loud: the Habsburgs actively married within their own clan so as not to divide power. The blood became more and more its own. The purity of the dynasty was above all else. The problem was that biology did not sign this contract. Chronic diseases, deformities, tissue weakness, poor wound healing, all of this was actually documented in the descendants of the dynasty at various periods. In some branches of the Habsburgs, the level of kinship was so high that it was as if the child was born not from two different people, but from a brother and sister. This is not a poetic metaphor, it is a mathematical indicator of kinship. Hence the famous Habsburg jaws, when the lower jaw protruded so far forward that it was difficult to chew and pronounce sounds normally. Hence also poor health, infertility, stillborn children, constant fevers, and wounds that would not heal. So when people at court whispered that her body was rotting because her blood was spoiled, it wasn't just a religious, God is punishing us. It was also very down to earth, we ourselves cooked our dynasty in one pot. And now someone whispers, she is rotting not because she is sick. She is rotting because our blood is spoiled. It is the smell of sin. Legend has it that a court physician lost a piece of bandage while dressing a wound. The bandage stuck to an ulcer on her thigh. When it was torn off, a dark green, almost black coating was visible under the skin. And allegedly, this doctor said, the princess is already dead, only her body has not yet reached that point. It sounds like a cheap, cruel drama, I agree. But it is not important whether it actually happened. What is important is that it was told. The very fact that the court allowed such a story to live means complete panic. Because even if your own princess becomes a symbol of decay from within, for you, the empire no longer smells of holiness. It smells of rot. And here, worst of all, diplomacy comes into play. Imagine an ambassador from another country who has to return home and say to his monarch, yes, the Spanish are offering us a marriage. Yes, she is an official infanta. But how can I put this? Spain is selling us a corpse. Because that's how it sounded in enemy pamphlets, they are not offering you a bride. They are offering you a body for burial. In other words, her smell becomes an argument against Spain. Her body is a weapon in the information war. Spain's enemies don't even need to come up with new propaganda, it's enough to simply whisper to other courts that Spanish princesses stink to high heaven. And there you have it, a ready-made meme of the Baroque era, rotten Spain. Here, the story becomes not just disgusting. It becomes tragic. When you are a political commodity, and that commodity is spoiling, what do? You hide it away. That is exactly what happened. The princess is gradually removed from public life. She is shown less and less. Official receptions are cancelled due to fatigue. Marriage negotiations suddenly require more time. She is supposedly in a period of special piety and prayer. She allegedly devotes herself to God and takes upon herself the suffering of Spain. That's how it's presented to the outside world. And now the unvarnished translation, she is being hidden away. She is settled in remote chambers. The curtains are heavy and thick. The windows are half closed. Not only for privacy, but also to contain the smell. You can't just walk in on her. She cannot simply be shown. She becomes a royal secret that cannot be allowed into the hall where the foreign ambassador sits. And here is another scene that appears in later descriptions as a legend. She allegedly asked, "Let me go to a convent." Not because of her faith, but because of her shame. Some accounts include a scene that really makes your throat tighten. During dressing changes, she asked to extinguish the extra candles and leave only one, far away, so that the room would be dimly lit. Not because she was in pain. Pain was already like background noise to her. She was ashamed of how her thighs and groin looked. She was so ashamed of her own smell that she apologized to the maid. Imagine the status, the official daughter of the House of Habsburg apologizes to a woman of lower status for making her feel nauseous with her smell. This is the moment when it becomes clear, this is not a spoiled princess. This is a person who is no longer living, she apologizes for her very existence alongside others. But her request was never heard. For the court, it was impossible, the infanta, even sick and humiliated, remained part of Spain's prestige. Letting her go to a convent would mean publicly admitting that the body of the House of Habsburg had rotted so badly that it had to be hidden. So she was simply left in the same rooms, under supervision, with no right to escape or confess. In fact, it was a convent without God. A room that smelled of wax, medicine, and loneliness. She didn't want the maids to vomit when they bandaged her. She didn't want to hear the whispers behind the door, "Did you feel that? She already smells like a corpse." In other words, the princess, who was raised as a living diplomatic weapon, now asks for isolation not for the sake of the dynasty's honor, but simply so as not to humiliate others with her own body. This is not a story about a spoiled aristocrat. This is a story about a girl who realizes that her body has become a public humiliation. And now for the most cynical part. The court does not protect her as a person. The court protects the brand. And if the only way to save the brand is for her to disappear, then she will disappear. There were rumors that the monarch's closest advisor said something like, "This child cannot be sent abroad. She cannot become someone's queen. Her scent will become a weapon against us." Translation: she is not a resource. She is a threat. This is the Catherine Howard of our story. In Henry VIII, the young girl was isolated, humiliated, and executed in the name of the royal image. Here, the young girl is isolated and erased while she is still alive, also in the name of the royal image. The only difference is that there, the king was the executioner. Here, the executioner is the system itself. As with Henry VIII, the horror did not end at the moment of death. On the contrary. After death, it only got worse. The official version, beautifully recorded, a quiet, pious death from fever. A soul that accepted suffering with humility. Almost saintly. And what does the court whisper? That the body decomposed so quickly that it was impossible to hold a grand ceremony befitting an infanta of her rank. That the funeral was cut short, pushed through almost secretly, without an excess of diplomatic guests. Why? Because no one wanted to risk the same scandal that was already felt when she was alive, the smell. There is a particularly dirty story, and it is from the category of things that people like to talk about in scary legends because they are too creepy to ignore. It was said that when the coffin was being transported, such a strong smell of decay began to emanate from it that the procession had to be shortened and the body taken away secretly. Eyewitnesses allegedly said that people covered their faces with scarves soaked in vinegar so as not to lose consciousness. That is, even after death, she remained what she was in life, a test for the court. Modern historians consider this to be part of hostile propaganda, the so-called black legend, but the very fact that this story was spread shows that the empire really did smell different, and not like holiness. This echoes the legends about Henry VIII's coffin, which, according to legend, burst from the gases of decomposition, and even dogs allegedly licked what had leaked out. He had a king meet. She had a princess whom the regime tried to keep untouchable, but ended up with a fiasco even after her death. Is there any accurate documentation to confirm this? We will be honest, no, this is the level of court gossip and hostile propaganda against the Spanish court. But here's what's important, this story lived on. People wanted to believe it. Why? Because it fit perfectly into the already established narrative, Spain is rotten. Next, politics. Spain's European competitors spent decades building the image of the so-called black legend, that Spain was not piety, but fanaticism. Not strength, but sadism. Not holiness, but incest and degeneration. A cruel, sick, morally rotten state that is physically decaying. And this girl, this real sick child, became the perfect icon of this legend. She became a symbol, here's your Catholic greatness. Here's your divine blood. It stinks so badly that people faint. That is, even after her death, she worked for the empire. Just not in the way she had been promised since childhood. Listen carefully, because this is the most important thing. This girl was told from childhood, your body is the glory of the house. You are pure. You are blessed. You are the embodiment of the ideal. Then her body broke. And when it broke, the court did not admit, we destroyed the child with constant pressure, blood politics, religious hysteria, and the cult of genealogy. No. They said, she is disgracing us with her smell. They made her the problem. They replaced her name with the word shame. They hid her, like a leaking wound under a layer of satin and prayers. And then, after her death, they sold her as a myth. And Spain's enemies bought that myth with pleasure. That's why this story is important. It's not just, haha, the princess stank. It's a story about how an empire first promises its children divinity, and then, when it turns out that these children are ordinary, sick, fragile, wounded, the empire literally writes their pain as political advertising. She didn't make it. She didn't become the bride of Europe. She became proof that the fairy tale of pure royal blood is a lie. Because if the blood is so pure, why does it rot before death? Her body rotted first. Then the house rotted. Then the empire rotted. And if you still think that monarchy is about nobility and honor, let me tell you, it doesn't smell like honor. It smells more like that corridor in Madrid, where the maid couldn't take it anymore and fainted.